Join us on Saturday, August 17th, 2024 for the Star Choice is Yours Women's Day event at Altitude Fourways, a day dedicated to empowerment, inspiration and transformation. Engage with dynamic speakers, attend interactive conversations and connect with amazing women just like you. The event will be hosted by the fabulous Unatingai. Don't miss out on this opportunity to celebrate and elevate yourself. Get your tickets now at www.quicket.co.za for 550 Rand, drinks, food and a gift bag included. Plus, stand a chance to win an honor product. This incredible event is powered by independent media and the Honor 200 series.
Greatness has a way of overcoming all the obstacles. South Africa is readmitted into the International Olympic Committee. The Afrika Dzonga flag was flown by marathoner Dan Dow at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games Barcelona 1992. Elana Meyer rose to the occasion with a silver medallion in the women's 10,000 meters. While tennis doubles pairing of Wayne Ferreira and Pete Norval grabbed another silver.
Second and silver medalist representing South Africa,
Wayne Ferreira and Pete Norval.
Team Africa Jibembe. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
#SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. It's the final installment of our series focusing on agriculture, and in particular the plight of small-scale farmers. The Director General in the department, Moeketsa Ramasodi, is our guest for this morning. So, Mr. Ramasodi, before we move on, I want to stay with this issue of land acquisitions. You said that you're currently running a program where if farmers have leased land and that land is state-owned land, they can what? They need to approach you and then you will automatically give them title deeds. How does the process work? Because already I'm getting questions from people who need to understand how it is that they can be in line to receive these title deeds.
No, thank you very much. That question is something that those farmers who are actually currently residing and leasing those lands, they would have received letters from the department. They should by now also have had contacts from the provincial coordinators to come into the system of government to come and have a discussion. The progress that we have, there's a criteria that is there to say that the person must have been on that farm and currently using the farm to the benefit of the agricultural sector that is productively using the land, and the farmer at that stage should not have any outstanding lease payments that are due to government. And from there, the process is then set rolling to ensure that they then get the title deed to that farm. So there are conditionalities, but the essence is to ensure that farmers who are currently leasing land would have land and would have title deeds given by government.
For those that are occupying land or in lease agreements with private entities, you say that they need to approach their local municipalities.
No. I said the adverts are made through local municipalities, in fact, in terms of papers that would have the print media that is there at local level. Mm-hmm. But those adverts are actually coming from the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development to ensure that farmers have got access to land. So that's what I'm saying, that when we acquire the land now, those who are not having land or have leased land because they have got an advantage because they are already in the sector, they can make those applications and go through the rigorous system that we have in terms of selecting them to then be given to be in line to be allocated funds.
I've got a message here from Jerome. He's out in Matatiele. He says, I've been applying for how long with the Department for Land? Since 2004. I contacted someone at the department in Port Elizabeth. He said he would send somebody in my area that will help me. I have a landowner who's willing to lease land to me, and it's on a farm that I grew up in. And our family graveyard is also on this farm. It's more than a hectare. How can I get help?
That falls into two categories in terms of my own understanding where he is. If they have resided in a place for some time, the parents might have been labor tenants, and therefore the issue around the rules around labor tenants and ESTA might take precedence in terms of the engagements with him. But I also hear the person wants to even go bigger, and therefore there might also be a need for engagement. Now, we get quite a lot, Wakam Mohlahlana, an indication coming from farmers who would say, I've seen a piece of land, I've spoken to the owner, and I would like to then access this land. It becomes my land. Now, it may be an easier way of dealing with issues, but we should also understand that the pipeline in terms of those who are looking for land, the land hunger is quite high. And therefore, once the process unfolds, you would still be expected to undergo that rigorous program of selection. You should still be subjected to the beneficiary selection and land allocation policy. But in terms of this person who's there, there might be other laws that might be applicable that might even lead to the person getting land other than the normal way of the beneficiary selection, but through labor tenancy or farm workers looking at those areas, yes.
And the fact that he has not gotten a response from the department, he's always the one going after the department and no help at all.
Yeah.
And while I'm on that, sorry, Mr. Ramasodi, there are a couple of other messages that have come in, and the sentiment that is coming through is that there is little communication in terms of feedback from the department when people have applied. It's a similar sentiment that's shared by Peter from Vleekop AH in Randfontein.
No, thank you very much. I was going to come to the issue of our legalistical kind of response that the colleague is referring to. Since 2004 that they have been coming through to the department and they having no assistance, that these things should be raised in terms of the department so that we can respond to those. It's unacceptable that you have got an individual who has been running this, and there are various means that we can assist the people to access land that to date that they have not been assisted. And to Peter, the issue around feedback, that's something that I'm taking and will be discussing with the team that does land redistribution, just to ensure that we have got that system tightened up. Because in terms of administrative justice, a person who applies would need to know each and every time where their application is, and should not be phoning the department in order to get an indication of the progress or no progress that has been made in terms of their application.
It seems like you could well be sitting with a much bigger problem than that, Mr. Ramasodi. I'm going to pause you there. It's time for the latest news headlines. We'll continue this conversation in a moment. I also see you on the phone lines. I'll be putting you on shortly.
Thank you very much, Cathy, and a very good morning. With the news headlines, Kemudupi Makhalemele. The MK party says its leader Jacob Zuma will engage his legal team on his expulsion from the ANC. There's been a cash and transit heist on the N6 between East London and Komani near McLean Town in the Eastern Cape. And the Independent Policing Union IPUSA has called for improved resource allocation to police stations following the shooting of 8 people at a tavern in Kanana in the northwest on Saturday. Details of these and other stories coming up at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this hour, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 28 to the dollar, 23 rand 48 to the pound, and 19 rand 83 to the euro. Markets in Asia were higher at the closing bell. The JSE has extended gains in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are green across the board this morning. Gold is trading at $2,370, platinum $933 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $82.36 a barrel.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue our focus on agriculture, in particular looking at the challenges facing the sector, especially when it comes to small-scale farmers, those whose entities are not considered to be commercially viable. On the line is DG in the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Moeketsa Ramasodi. So, Mr. Ramasodi, I was saying that the issue of feedback and having that communication with whether it's applicants or individuals that are approaching the department for assistance in one way or another, it seems to be a bigger issue that you are facing more holistically. If I think about one of the stories shared by our entrepreneurs, she had to come to the national department and ask for intervention from the national department because the department in her province, which is Limpopo, where she's operating out of, simply was not getting back to her, was not responding. And of course, she was losing valuable time.
Admittedly, running any system, you are bound to have challenges. That is why even from ministry level, even within the office of the DG per se, we have got a case management system where if there's something that has been lodged with us, we are able then to respond and carry that feedback to the provincial side. I think it is also prudent for me to indicate that at some stages, we have got to have this understanding that agriculture is actually a mandate that is at provincial level and at national level. There are certain functions that are done at a provincial level and certain functions that would be coordinated at national level. And therefore, that level of engagement within the department and the national department and provincial department needs to be tight in order to ensure that farmers are not frustrated. So that's one of the things that I thought would be very important to note at this moment. In my own office, we have got quite a lot of issues that we are dealing with that would normally be done at the provincial level, and therefore it's one way of saying yes, we are aware that there are challenges that you are having, and through the engagements with the heads of departments at provincial level, we constantly trying to deal with the issues to ensure that our farmers do what they have got to do, that's farming, not correspondences with the department.
So do you find that the mandate of the department is not being carried out with the same commitment at a provincial level in some instances?
I would say, if I say commitment, I would be misrepresenting the facts. What is happening currently is that you would get the provincial level having budgetary constraints and actually moving money to areas where they think that they would get maximize, even optimize the outputs. And in that process where they are, they may even miss some of those very good farmers within the system. So at this moment, we're dealing with mainly an issue around financing, because that's one of the areas where we have got a challenge. And through National Treasury, we are trying to get funds to flow into agriculture, because it is one of those sectors where you can maximize. I think in any business, you will correct me. is that there is no better than in farming, because one rand that you invest in terms of farming would be getting you another rand, and you would then be able to deal with issues that permeate to that. So the underfunding within the program is what we also experience. I wouldn't say that the provinces would not have the very same level of engagement. I think at this moment we're dealing with a funding issue.
Lydia, you're calling us from Kraalfontein. Good morning.
That's Kraalfontein in Van der Bijl Park.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Ramasodi. I'm one of the farmers who bought before the Plus program came into effect. Now, over the years, we have seen attention being given to farmers that are in government-owned lands, especially in Van der Bijl Park or around the areas there in the Vaal area. There were a number of people that had bought plots when they were cheap and farms when they were cheap, but I think their scene at the time was to buy before this project came into effect, because whilst the law department was post-settling the farmers that are in government list farms, giving them, I know of 3 tranches that were done, which is 30,000 and 150,000 and millions in recaps. Privately owned farmers were given absolutely nothing by your department. They have never been catered for, despite the policy allowing recap for them as well. They were put at the back, the back list to say priority is given to these farmers that are in government list property. And I'm glad that you are beginning to give them a title deeds now, because we actually felt like the missing middle at some point. And I would like to know, how are you going to address that going forward, given that a number of plots are lying fallow in area around Vaal, because those farmers who bought those farms are not being assisted, and they have never been given post-settlement agreement. Yet they are part of your statistics when you do the farms or land in black hands. I would like to know, what is it that you are going to do now for those farmers that have bought and they have been struggling all along? Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Lydia in Kraalfontein. Simon, you're in Cape Town. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning to the Kaide. Cathy, they're supposed to give us a website, give people a website where we can check if there's a farm has been given to black people. Because now they don't give us that website. We don't know which area that land was distributed. And they must come to the radio and keep on talking about the land issue. Guys, we got a land that's been given to people, but it's lying fallow. They're keeping quiet. When the land is lying fallow for so many years, they don't give us help. Even if you can get a land, but you need help from government. With our black color skin, we will never get help in our government. So they must have a website. They must do a follow-up. Guys, there's a certain area where the land was given to people, but it's lying fallow. But they don't do that.
Okay.
They don't do that. Yes.
Simon, thanks for that contribution. Nicholas, you're in the Eastern Cape. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Now, I've just joined the program, but as soon as I heard that it was, agriculture, on air, I wanted to have this conversation. I think, Cathy, for years, if there's an advert, especially, about the land issue, advertising the land or the farm, then you are interested in that it should be online or advertised on the news, the papers. You apply according to, first, understand, come to the point of, according to the terms of reference that are there, I think I qualify. Then you apply. the first thing that is most frustrating about most of these departments, rural development, agriculture, when they were together, is that you will never even get an acknowledgement of receipt of your application. And let alone that, because I think I'm coming from an old school. I'm not young anymore. In our days, in the previous regimes, at least if you have applied for something, there's a decency of being, people coming back in writing and say, we acknowledge the receipt of whatever it is. That is what is most frustrating with this, this new government. And also, when you invite them, Cathy, on air, they are so eloquent. They can present everything, put it in, big words, but just follow up on what they have promised on air. It just doesn't come right. I hope that they can improve their services, Kate. Thank you very much.
Nicholas, out in the Eastern Cape. We're going to take a quick break. I'll give Moeketsa an opportunity to respond after this.
Nothing beats the feeling of relaxing on your couch after a long, hard day, getting rid of those work clothes and feeling the freedom of being in your PJs. Throwing off that lace front, undoing your hair, that makeup, voila, gone. It's going to be a quiet, relaxed night. Well, not on S3. Bring a whole lot of vroom to your weeknights with Top Gear Season 16. Monday to Wednesday at 10 p.m. and Top Gear specials such as Top Gear from A to Z and Top Gear The Races. Friday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. Channel your inner vroom with BBC Primetime. Only on S3. Open up.
There will be no hiding place in the men's hockey Pool A encounter between South Africa and Germany. The African Giants and Europe's well-decorated outfit are both chasing the vital points. This is the Olympic Games Paris 2024. South Africa faces Germany on Tuesday, 30 July at 10:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport is the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. For the love of the game.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. I'm going to give the Director General in the Agriculture Department an opportunity to respond to the questions that you have asked so far. Mr. Ramasodi.
Thank you, Mohlahlana. The issue that was raised by Melidia, I think it's one of the areas that I've always consistently harped about as an individual. To say you basically have got a person who has got a skin in the game by buying land, and therefore they have shown initiative from that perspective. And these are the people that we should be focusing on to ensure that they can be able to deal with multiplicities of issues that we have got in farming. To that effect, government has partnered with a few institutions. In this case, the Industrial Development Corporation, where we have got a fund of 1.2 billion, where we have got grant funding and also loan funding for the farmers to access to deal with projects that would make the farming operations to be viable. We also have got a 1.95 billion fund with the land bank that we are running, and they are still taking calls for funding from the farmers. And having had a meeting with the CEO of the land bank, that's one area that is of focus. Of late, we have also signed off with ABSA to assist farmers with blended finance. We also have got an agro-energy fund that we are also assisting farmers with, where we have taken note of the challenges around electricity, and we're funding farmers to have alternative sources of energy that is also funded through the Land Bank. I know that Melidia would know about the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program that she can get from Gauteng, and she can also use part of that in terms of Ilimaletsema. She's correct in terms of how RECAP was run. That is why RECAP was during the fifth administration, that RECAP was stopped because at some stage the issues around the management of RECAP became center because it assisted, but the way that we ran it as a department left a few loopholes in terms of how funding was done. So we still have got a component that is called the land development support that is assisting farmers in plus land, but we have got additionally other funding streams that we have got for the farmers, and I would quite be willing to engage with Melidia through your producer so that I can have a discussion with her.
So
Simon?
before you move on, Moeketsa, I'm hearing you talk about all of these billions that have been allocated, right, to support farmers. But if we're to look at it realistically, often the kind of detail that would be required to apply for some of that funding is perhaps out of spec for some of the small-scale farmers that we're talking about here. But yet they still need the support to be able to scale up their businesses, right? So if somebody's saying, well, I'm farming whatever I'm farming of, I've got, a little bit of livestock, I want to grow it, can I get 500,000 Rand? It's very different to then going to an institution that's going to tell them, well, we can only help you if you need more than 5 million Rand, because scaling up a business to that point, it takes time.
It does, but in my response to Aus Lydia, I did not only focus on the issues where you have got financial institutions. I also focused on grant funding that is available within government and that you can get through the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program, which has got various interventions within the agricultural space, whether it's for crop production or livestock production. So Gauteng would be able to assist. Together with that, you have got the Ilimaletsema program. If you grow even higher, you can go, if you want to buy some stake into businesses, you have got the Agri-BE fund. So those are the grants that you would have, the two grants in terms of CASP and Ilimaletsema, and the others would be blended finance, that would have a major component being that from government. So it's not only from that perspective. When it comes to the complexity of the forms that you have got to fill, in my engagements with the Land Bank is that having grown up in a farming area, having been raised by a grandfather who was a farmer who did not even go to school, he had access to funding through various mechanisms. And therefore, we need to make this, in actual fact, easier for farmers to access this by not having complicated forms, by ensuring that we are straight to the point in terms of the farmers, and we have got a support mechanism. So part of the challenges that we had, I think it was 2 years back when we ran the Jobs Fund, was that you would have a lot of farmers who were applying, but at the same time, you would have forms that are half filled, or they were so complex that the farmers did not understand where they were. And we agreed, all of us, that that's not the way that we should be running this. You need to simplify so that you can be able to deal with the business aspect of the farmer, not to complicate matters just to push paper maybe somewhere in the office. The next point that was raised, I think, was by Simon, who said the website of the department, it is www.dallrrd.gov.za. I repeat, www.dallrrd.gov.za. Now, he spoke about land that is lying fallow. And I think as an agriculturist, I will be failing if I say that land that is lying fallow is an agricultural term. Land that is not being used is not lying fallow. Fallow is used for a specific purpose, to rest the soil, for it to recuperate, for it to be used for another purpose. And therefore, that would be land that is unused. And there's quite a lot that we are having in our country. And therefore, in terms of the strategy that we have, the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan, which is a plan that looks at 5 areas of importance. Pillar 4 of that plan talks about ensuring food security, expanding production, which is part and parcel of this fallow land that we are talking about, in order to create employment and also ensure that there's inclusivity in this sector of ours. So that's where we posit the issues that was raised by Ndate Simon.
Okay. All right.
Ndate Nicholas,
if you can just touch on that briefly, please, because we've got still quite a number of callers that are waiting to come on the line.
Okay. Ndate Nicholas, in terms of the advert of land, I agree with you. I'm also from the old school. You have got to get acknowledgement in terms of your applications. Thank you, ma'am.
Koti, you're out in Polokwane. Good morning.
I can hear the issue of finances and all that. I'm not calling concerning the finance. I'm calling concerning the availability of farming land. You know, we have a problem, as one other caller mentioned, that there is a lot of land that is lying low, is not used, you know, and people have got those agreements, lease agreements with the department. Giving the example that my sister was one of the members in the group, so they are all old. They can no longer do anything since that thing the land lies low. Nothing is happening, vandalized and all that. We tried that. Let us get into the group so that we should be able to use that land. You know, immediately we start to compile the documents. Nothing had happened, and when we try to use the land, there will be someone coming from the department in Polokwane and come and say, no, you cannot use this land. You must go away. And it's lying like that. Nothing is happening. There is poverty. People are dying with poverty. People cannot go to school. We try to help, but there's nothing coming from the department. We don't want their money. We want the land. We've got our own pocket. We've got our own wallet. You know, we want the land. We want to use it. If they can just say, just go to this office and talk to those people and sign the documents and use the land. Simple as that.
Okay, Goti, thanks for that. Dintwe in Tabanchu, good morning. Good morning, Dintwe.
Good morning, Cathy.
Yes.
Yeah, no. I just want to say that to the, I'm sure it's the DG, I'm sure because I joined the program late, that I'm on my way to his office in Pretoria. I'm sure about January if I will be still alive. Cathy, I'm an emerging farmer or a smallholder farmer for now 36 years. I bought my livestock first in 1988 whilst under Buputatswana, and the land that I'm using, the small land that I'm using, is the land that we got from the old order. I've applied, I'm sure, for more than 30 times in the Department of Land Affairs, whilst you are still called Land Affairs. And one caller also said that there's no reply or acknowledgement that you will receive from that department. Regine was on this platform, SAFM, some years back, and I complained to him and said to him, seemingly the policy of the department is now discriminating on us as men, because there's no way where we are mentioned that we will be helped to get land. I've been farming, as I say, is now almost 36 years. I want to grow, and the age is catching up with me. 5 years back, I brought in my daughter as a front. She's farming also with me, and next year, I'm sure she'll be 35, and then she will be old. She will not be considered again that, no, she is no more a youth. You see, but the thing is, the Department of Land Affairs has failed us as farmers. The department, instead of growing the existing farmers, the department has been creating new farmers. And the DG, if he can be honest with himself or to us as farmers, how many farmers that they have given land are doing well in this age? Because we have been ignored, we who are in farming. But the message to him is that I'll be visiting him with a file that I'm going to open before him to show him how I have been struggling. Thank you, Cathy, to bring in the DG.
All right. All right, Dintwe out in Tabanchu there. Yeah, you heard what Dintwe is saying, right? Bringing in his daughter just so that he can change the standing of the farm because he believes it's the only way that he would be able to qualify for that. And it's something we frown upon on a day-to-day basis, right? Fronting in organizations where people are put there just so that they can fulfill a certain criteria. But are people like Dintwe being pushed to do that because they're not getting feedback, they're not getting answers when they're trying to and interact with the department? We'll get then the answers from the Director General in a moment. We'll do that after the 11 o'clock news. We're going to take a quick break that'll lead us into the latest news update.
Weeknights on S3 are all about winning and winning big with Wheel of Fortune. For the first time in South Africa, Wheel of Fortune is on S3, Monday to Friday at 7:30 p.m., where Rorisang has South Africans locked into the world of word puzzles. Watch contestants spin the wheel to stand a chance of walking away with 100,000 Rand or a car valued at over 500,000 Rand. You can also be part of the show and win big. To be part of the show, log on to wheeloffortunesa.tv and let the wheel decide your fate. Channel your inner wordsmith with Wheel of Fortune SA on S3. Open up.
You wouldn't think of him without thinking of gold. Wade van Niekerk won gold and broke Michael Johnson's 17-year-old world record.
He's pulling away. It's an unbelievable victory by a huge margin. A century of history at 43.03.
Van Niekerk's performance at the men's 400-meter final will undoubtedly be remembered forever. Although he was running blind in lane 8, considered the worst lane on the track, the 24-year-old rider gave it his all and broke a 17-year-old record and won gold at the same time. South Africa left Rio with 10 medals and numerous first times. The country's athletes wrote their stories into the Olympic history books and will forever be admired for their achievements. Magical moments of the Olympics, brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Stay tuned to SAFM coming up.
The top stories at 11 o'clock. Zuma to get legal advice on ANC expulsion and doubts over Venezuela's election results. A very good morning to you. The MK party says its leader Jacob Zuma will engage his legal team on his expulsion from the ANC. The former president has 20 days in which to appeal the expulsion. It was revealed in leaked draft documents which are in the SABC's possession, which show that the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee has found Zuma guilty of prejudicing the integrity of the party after acting in collaboration with the MK party. This followed a virtual disciplinary hearing on Tuesday last week. Sibahle Mota has more.
The MK party says that it is shocked and dismayed that the National Disciplinary Committee's outcomes, which recommend that Zuma be expelled from the ANC, have been leaked. Party spokesperson Tlamulo Ndlela says this is nothing but an act that appears to be a deliberate attempt by the ANC of Ramaphosa to undermine Zuma. Zuma, who once led the ANC, has been charged for contravening Rule 25.17 of the ANC Constitution after he announced that he would not be campaigning nor voting for the ANC in the 2024 elections. Zuma was also charged for his role in the registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party as a political party. I am Sibahle Mota in Johannesburg.
There's been a cash-in-transit heist on the N6 between East London and Komani near McLeantown in the Eastern Cape. The robbers used explosives to bomb the cash van and access the money. The affected part of the road has been closed. Provincial Transport spokesperson Unati Bingosi says law enforcement officers are on the scene.
Road users can expect a bit of a lengthy delay in this road closure as the police need to be thorough in doing their investigations, ensuring that every explosive that had been used had detonated in the interest of road users. We are calling for patience, we're calling for understanding, we're calling for the obedience of road instructions from our traffic law enforcement who are on the ground. And disturbingly for us as the province, this is the second cash-in-transit heist in as many months on that stretch of the road.
The Independent Policing Union IPUSA has called for improved resource allocation to police stations. This follows the shooting of 8 people at a tavern in Kanana in the northwest on Saturday. 12 people were wounded and are currently in hospital. The union's president, Bethuel Nkuna, says officers are failing to prevent crime under the current policing model.
We need reform so that SARS can be proactive in preventing these crimes from happening. That is why we urge the SATS to move towards improved technologies. We need face identification cameras to be installed at all police stations. They also have to have interception systems that can be utilized under the auspices of the law to intercept criminal activities to ensure successful prosecution in court.
Eastern Cape Education MEC Fundile Kate is today expected to visit the family of a grade 10 learner who was stabbed to death at the Rocklands Intermediate School at Kariega. Education spokesperson Malibongwe Mtinga says the incident happened after the learners were released and were on their way to their scholar transport outside the school premises on Friday. He says the learner was stabbed in the neck, allegedly by a grade 9 schoolmate, following a quarrel. And on the international front, there's skepticism among some foreign governments about Venezuela's official election results. President Nicolas Maduro won a third term in office in yesterday's poll. The Chilean President Gabriel Boric says the results are hard to believe. Argentina's President Javier Milei, who has long been a fierce critic of Nicolas Maduro, says he will not recognize what he terms another fraud. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken had this reaction.
We've seen the announcement just a short while ago by the Venezuelan Electoral Commission. We have serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will or the votes of the Venezuelan people. It's critical that every vote be counted fairly and transparently.
The top story this hour, the MK party says its leader Jacob Zuma will engage his legal team on his expulsion from the ANC. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Channel more reasons to feel encouraged on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3, as Councillor Sadia Southgate shares how mental health support helps us see a brighter day. Making sense of food labels gets us eating right. Chef Dumi and Jay make a whipped feta and grilled lamb flatbread. That's Afternoon Express, this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Futa Free is more than just football. It's a celebration of passion, community, and the magic of Africa's beautiful game. Futa Free goes beyond the final score. Uncover the heart of the game with special profile segments, taking you on a captivating journey across the continent. Experience the fabric of African football. Foot Afrique, every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. on SABC1 and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. on SABC Sport on TTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Morning, Cathy, the listeners, and the Minister of Agriculture. This is Magdalene from Bloom. The Minister, I think the President made it clear that he's going to ensure that red tapes are removed for service delivery sake. Will you please ensure that you remove the red tapes of favorism when it comes to serving the historically disadvantaged South Africans who are interested in exploring their potential ability in agricultural economic sector? I sell eggs, but I don't have a farm. So I try to explore by trying to have a farm. Please remove red tapes. Make any problems. Thank you.
Good morning, Aus Cathy and the listeners. Can you please ask your guest today, Aus Cathy, what is their plan with regards to the abandoned farms all over the country? So you remember the government used to encourage people to go in co-ops and then they would be given farms, but I think 80 or 75% of those failed, and then people went back to townships and then abandoned those farms. They only scrapped those farms, taken whatever they could salvage from there.
This is Cathy. Good morning, and good morning to your guest. I just want to ask, I'm living in Taung in the northwest, living in a communal land. But my sister, truly speaking, I want to check with them. How do we get an assistance from our department when we come into communal land? Because of, last time, Land Bank was giving people, actually trying to assist people, but us here in the communal land, it was so difficult for us to access those helps. Because truly speaking, now this sector of agriculture in the northwest, it has been neglected. The MEC who was running this one, who is now currently the speaker of the Northwest Legislature, she actually destroyed this thing. So please just ask your guests, how do we can we also get the help from the department while we are living in the communal land? Because truly speaking, it's difficult. Thank you.
#SAFM Talking Point.
You're listening to the Talking Point. Welcome to the final hour of the show. Of course, we're beginning this hour with just wrapping up our conversation with the DG in the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Moeketsa Ramasodi. Perhaps, Mr. Ramasodi, just to roughly then wrap up the key points from our listeners. There's the issue of applying for different programs and not getting any feedback from the department. And that is clearly creating a lot of frustration. And people often, it's not even a case of not knowing where to go, but where they go, they don't get the help that they believe they should. What is the department going to do to change this?
No, thank you very much. I don't know whether you would also like me to wrap up on the other issues that were raised, or you would like me just to focus on that matter.
Please just let's answer this question, because it would help a lot of people if I can show you our WhatsApp line of the number of farmers that it's a general concern that they're sharing with us this morning, that they're applying for programs, but no responses from the department, no follow-up, and this is creating, like I'm saying, a great deal of frustration.
Yes, and the frustration is noted, and the frustration is also acknowledged coming through from the farmers who are applying. I had, when responding to Dr. Nicholas earlier on, indicated that administratively, if a person applies, they should be afforded the courtesy of just saying that we acknowledge that you have written to us. And that's something that I am going to personally work on to ensure that all farmers have got their feedback. In terms of the system, in terms of government, it's just something that we have got to do because there are standard operating procedures that deal with it. If somebody is not doing it, it's just negligence or even commission from the side of the department. So I'll deal with the issue around administration of the programs that you deal with, that each and every farmer who applies should be having feedback from their applications each and every time without fail, because it cannot be correct that at this day and time that a farmer would say that I have not had feedback from the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, because I would tell you that within the sector there are many things that we can talk about, but if the issue now is around us having administrative issues, I will deal with those, Mohlahlana.
All right. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there for this morning. But I must say that there's so many messages, and the majority of them from people who are actually in the industry. And we'll forward all those to you, Mr. Ramasodi. But certainly, it seems that there's a lot more that the department can be doing to better address the concerns of the many farmers that need your help.
We are the first ones to make that admission, that we working towards perfecting the system that government has, and there would be those areas that we need to give attention to, and we welcome all the issues that the farmers have raised, and we'll attend to them. Thank you.
All right, Moeketsa Ramasodi, the DG in the Department of Agriculture. Yeah, I wonder what you make of that. If you're joining in the conversation now, sorry you've missed it. You'll have to go and catch the podcast. I'm going to take a quick break and then we get into our final conversation of the day.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
Oscar and Emmy winner Kevin Costner is John Dutton, a sixth-generation homesteader and devoted father. John controls the largest contiguous ranch in the United States, operating in a corrupt world where politicians are compromised by influential oil and lumber corporations and where land grabs make developers billions. Shifting alliances, unsolved murders, open wounds, and hard-earned respect puts Dutton's property in constant conflict with those it borders, an expanding town, an Indian reservation, and America's first national park. Channel your inner drama with Yellowstone, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
High emotions and tension will prevail from the early moments of the contest between Spain and South Africa in the men's Pool A. The Europeans want to add the sound of a Spanish guitar in their game plan, but the African stars from Zanzibar refuse to drop their heads. This is the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Spain battles it out with South Africa on Wednesday, 31 July at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport is the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes.
For the love of the game.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
All right, thanks for joining the conversation on the Talking Point. So we will forward all of the voice notes and text messages of your complaints to the department so that the officials are able to see that when I say that we have people that are really complaining based on the experiences, I'm not making it up. and they can deal with it accordingly. Of course, we won't share your details, but we will just forward them the messages so that they can read them and listen to them for themselves. So we're focusing now on the issue of racism in our schools, and it's following two big headlines that came out last week, towards the end of the week. So we had the alleged racist incident that took place at Pretoria Girls High. It's a school that has been in national headlines before for incidents of racism. This time, it was around a WhatsApp group that had been set up by white learners, we understand. And in this group, then, they were said to have expressed racial or racist language, or language that had racial connotations, microaggressions and complaints about black students. So that's, the legal classification of what was contained in these WhatsApp messages. They've all since been suspended. At the same time, we also had a school out in the Western Cape where coloured pupils were seen on video auctioning off their black classmates for a certain amount of money. And again, this now incidents of racism, but also, I believe, bullying, just within the schooling environment. How do we begin to make sense of these events? Terry Oakley-Smith is MD of Diversity. Seth Mazibuko is a social justice activist. Terry, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's good to hear you on the radio. Seth, good morning.
Good morning, my sister. Hi, Terry. How's it? And then also good morning to your listeners.
And good morning to you, Seth. It's a great pleasure to be with you today.
I'm humbled. Thank you.
Terry, I deliberately use the two examples because I believe that how we interpret both examples could well be very different. And where we think about racism and what then qualifies as racist behavior, at least to the point where it needs to lead to disciplinary action taken against these teenagers in both instances.
Mm-hmm. I find it really quite depressing that Pretoria Girls High is coming up again. And it's not so long since we had the other incident, also to do with microaggressions and the way hair was dealt with in the school. I just wonder, Cathy, do people think that we're just going to get it right about race by doing nothing, by just letting the years go by and saying, 30 years have gone by since we had democracy, so how come there's still racism? Well, there's still racism because we've really done very little to actually end it. If I look at this school, and if we use Pretoria Girls High for a start, I want to ask them, what did they do? They said they did diversity. What did that mean? Diversity is a very, very broad stroke. It means that you, first of all, look at the school very carefully. You run a series of sessions. You call in the SGB. You work very carefully with them. Maybe you mentor the headmistress or the headmaster. It's not something that can be done and dusted in a sort of half a day. It's an ongoing process. And I think that there hasn't been that kind of ongoing process at all. It's very distressing to think that, I know we're all welcome to have WhatsApp group with our friends, but I think it says a lot about Pretoria Girls High that 12 girls, all white, would form part of a WhatsApp group. And again, it makes me question what actually has been done in that school to address the ongoing culture, if anything at all. And I think that's quite, that's quite distressing, and it shows how little's been done. I personally find the situation of the coloured pupils auctioning off their black colleagues even worse somehow. I mean, it goes beyond microaggressions. In Pretoria Girls High, there were complaints about how the uniform policy was being implemented. But to actually be auctioning off and assigning sums of money to people based on their race is very serious racist behavior, in my view. I don't know what Seth thinks.
And I'll give Dr. Seth a moment, an opportunity to also weigh in a moment. But before I do that, Terry, so schools are seen as a microcosm of society, and if we're to lift perhaps just the behavior of the girls from Pretoria High and think about what happens in the workspace, this is not unfamiliar, where you have groups of different races that belong to certain WhatsApp groups. Other people are not part of those groups. These are justified in ways of, no, but we belong to a particular social setting. We do the same thing over the weekends. We are friends outside work. And so whatever then falls part of that conversation is just what is said within the confines of the privacy of that platform. How different is it to what these girls did? And I hear the conversation around microaggressions and racial connotations, but you don't get people that are suspended from their jobs for having been on the same WhatsApp group and having made, perhaps some questionable statements about their black colleagues. This is life in South Africa every day.
I looked at the comments quite carefully, and I looked at them again this morning. And the comments to me, I mean, clearly they were very much about us and them. That was the content. Why are they allowed to get away with this and we are this? But there was no racial language. There was no, there were no N-words or K-words or anything of that sort. And I think how we measure was this racist or not is not about what we intended to do as white people. It's how did it land with the people we were talking about or the people we were reacting with. And if it causes harm and if it causes pain, that's racism, whether that was our intention or not. So it's not the intention, it's actually the effect, the impact, if I can say that. And I think that this whole issue of people having friends, I mean, I've been thinking so much about that South Pacific song about you've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. You've got to be taught before it's too late to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. So these girls all come from families, and I'm not saying that all their families are racist, but I mean, me as a parent would find it very strange if in 2024 my child had no friends of any other color than the color that she is or he is. So I think the impact of families is really deep. And that's why schools have such an important role to play in actually addressing it. And I really can't see what the school's done. The school governing body should be I don't think the education department should have jumped in with that knee-jerk response. I think that was a huge mistake. And looking at the things, only 2 of the girls actually said anything that could be construed as a microaggression, and yet all 12 of them in the group are suspended. I think there's been a lot of, hasty action instead of a lot of careful, thorough education around what it means to build a community of diverse people.
Seth?
What's happening? Okay. I speak here, I'm wearing on my other hat the principal of a school that I was, where I had, first of all, had to be a principal that is black in a multiracial environment. And when I had to sometimes deal with issues that at some point are not racial issues, but are simply disciplinary issues. And when you do discipline, then when you discipline to your other race, that discipline might be understood to be having some bias and at the same time maybe as interpreted as racism. Let me park that point. I'll come to it later as we engage. We have a problem in this country that in us defining and describing racism, we take, let me make an example. I'm in Soweto, stay in Soweto, and I would complain maybe if people are playing music loud after hours. And there will be, not only me complaining, but other people, but we will be classified by our own as go to Fenton, go and live in Fenton, not in Kasi. Then we then have to take the process of having to say, it is not that we are a particular class. This is just an issue of ethics and values as this community. Park that point, second point. I was in a boat the other day at the Mandela Week project. There were people in the community who were cleaning up, cleaning up the open spaces because those open spaces are very dirty. And when you do speak again about why is this dirt so much in the townships, not in the suburbs, that might be given another connotation. So I'm trying to say there are these sensitivities, or not even just sensitivities, but issues that maybe us also as Black people have to deal with, and white people have to confront also and head on. Because again, the issue of racism in this country is an issue that we have tried to make it an event or we use it at political spaces. I believe that now it has got to follow a particular program in different areas, different platform, different institutions. I agree with Terry. It is not just that now there was this incident at Pretoria girls last time. Oh yes, it's gone now. What are we doing? Not only as schools, but also as communities, because these kids that are saying and doing things come from communities. They live in these communities. Teachers will tell you that some of the problems that are happening in schools today, they are a mirror of what is happening in our communities, never mind our homes. So to me, there is still a big challenge with that the Department of Education must then be saying, just before I challenge the Department of Education again, Terry, and your listeners and my lady, is that when we speak of education, I was talking to a colleague the other day. Education should also be driving issues of culture. The culture of South Africa, not the culture of, Jews, Muslims, black, white. No. But what is that what child are we wanting to build? What mental state? The attitude of mind, and what is that we want to, other countries would actually put education even in a form of a system and department, put it with culture, because it is that culture that actually even that gets embedded in the curriculum, and then at the end of the day in the mindset of our children.
All right.
Let me pause there.
I'm going to pause you there. We're going to continue with this conversation shortly. It's 11:30 now. Time for your latest headlines.
Thank you very much, host Cathy. And with the news headlines, Cathy Mohlahlana, good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the government is in the process of fixing public procurement to prevent corruption. The MK party says its leader Jacob Zuma will engage his legal team on his expulsion from the ANC, and a teacher has been shot dead at a primary school in Lindelani in the north of Durban. I'll be back with a full news update at midday.
Channel more reasons to feel encouraged on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3, as Councillor Sadia Southgate shares how mental health support helps us see a brighter day. Making sense of food labels gets us eating right. Chef Dumi and Jay make a whipped feta and grilled lamb flatbread. That's Afternoon Express, this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
A century is full of thrilling moments. You can break it down to 10 decades. It is a journey of all kinds of challenges, but winners don't focus on the storm. They look forward to a rainbow. By contrast, South Africa tied its best ever gold medal performance in 100 years. From 1912 in Stockholm to London in 2012. Once again, it was in the pool that Team SA did most of their triumphing, with Cameron van der Berg setting a world record in winning the men's 100-meter breaststroke. And who will ever forget Chad de Clos toppling Michael Phelps in the men's 200-meter butterfly.
It's going to be close. Does he touch? He doesn't. Le Clos touched because Phelps got it wrong on the line. It's unbelievable.
Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're looking then at the recent, are they called incidents, recent events at some of our schools in particular that highlight the racism and perhaps even racist attitudes that exist within the confines of our schools, and how it is that we really begin to deal with it. Terry Oakley-Smith is the MD of Diversity, and Seth Masibuko is a social justice activist. So, Terry, I want to come back to you. When I was looking at these two incidents, one in the Western Cape and one here in Gauteng, the overt racism, right, is clear. But I also then had to come back and say, well, these are teenagers. To what extent do I believe that they are fully aware of the impact of their behavior? To what extent do they know what it is that they are doing? And what is the reasonable expectation of the awareness that these young 14 to 18-year-olds should have when they doing something like that?
Cathy, such an interesting and quite profound question, and one that I've also been asking myself. I think that it takes me back to the great significance of, or the great importance of schools taking their responsibility for helping to teach and educate young people. I mean, especially in our country with the history that we have, that Seth obviously was involved with, we have a great responsibility as parents, but especially at school level. There's an opportunity at schools where children actually do come together across racial lines, where they have an opportunity to integrate with one another, to converse with one another. So it's an ideal place in many ways to do this kind of education. And I really feel that this education hasn't been done. It isn't on the syllabus or the curriculum for schools, racism. It isn't on the syllabus or the curriculum for those learning to be teachers. How do we teach our teachers to address issues of racism if we don't include it in their curriculum when they're training? I ask myself, how many black teachers are there at Pretoria Girls High, given the huge numbers of black teachers that we turn out every year, and the numbers that sit at home and are unemployed, I wonder how many are employed at Pretoria Girls High, because all of these things are important. Representativity is so important, not just in the body of the pupils, but also in the body of the educators. Do we see black people educating our children, or do we see them sitting in the office or sweeping up in the garden? Because these are powerful examples that we're giving to our learners every single day. So I think that it's very difficult to know, obviously, what was in the minds of those youngsters, both in the Western Cape and at Pretoria Girls. But I just think that in both cases, their schools and, as Seth mentioned, their communities have a huge amount to do. We can't go on after 30 years and still be dealing with these things. It just shows that we're not taking them seriously, that we're not doing nearly enough.
Seth, as a former school principal yourself, the reasonable expectation of these teenagers, again, on the one hand, of course, there is this case which is obviously, incredibly gruesome when you look at it in the video. But then the other is perhaps not as overt. And like I was saying to Terry earlier, how is that different to what happens in corporate life in South Africa every day? People aren't suspended from being part of a WhatsApp group that meets at the golf club over the weekend.
I think my governing body did not like this in our school. I had a program where, and I think I did it also with some group of the school managers in KZN, and they thought I was too rough, where I asked people to sit in corners as races. Indians there, whites there, Africans there, colored in that other corner. Each group had to give that meeting or that session, what is it that you don't like with the groups that are here? You are one group, what is it that you don't like with Indians? What is it that, and it's amazing what came out there. And I did that in a smaller way in a student environment and in a school environment. And people understood that to be, in a way, racist, that I've divided people by races. But at the end of the day, we then had to say, what is it that in each one of those that we've discovered as things you don't like about the other race, how are you going to treat that other race in an environment like a school or workplace? And what do you think should be the punishment if you happen to do things that the other race might not feel comfortable with? And let me tell you, we have not sat down. That is why there will be those subtle racism utterances, insinuations, innuendos. But you won't, and they happen even in groups. I was not even aware about the colored school in Cape Town, but I was aware of the Pretoria. I've been following that very closely. But I'm saying it's because sometimes we are scared to confront issues that can, at the end of the day, explode and become a racism issue, even in their suckiness. We need, particularly in the States, where our children are being nourished, are being, educated and all. We need that kind of, let's, discuss these issues, and yeah, I'm trying to say you can only deal with the subtleties only if you come out there with the issues that hurt another race by another race.
Terry, how much grace should society be extending to these young people, given the fact that there is an opportunity to educate them differently? I mean, is it a complete write-off? So here's another thing that had me thinking, is is it going to make headlines every time there is behavior like what we saw at Pretoria Girls High? Is that going to make headlines every time? With the Western Cape example, of course it would make headlines. And should it make headlines when we have scenarios such as what happened with Pretoria Girls?
I think that's very interesting. I mean, I think those kind of issues, as you mentioned about the workplace, Cathy, those kind of incidents take place in many schools every day. I mean, St. Albans is another school that recently has been under the spotlight for racism and bullying allegations. So I think, these things happen all the time, and sometimes they're in the spotlight. For example, and I think probably the only reason that the Pretoria Girls High incident, which, in my mind was not terribly serious, was caught in the headlines, is because, the education department came rushing over to get involved in it. So I would say I hope not, but I hope not as long as schools are doing what they can to create what Seth calls a nourishing environment, where pupils or learners, rather, educators work together to build that kind of nourishing environment, and where there would be no need for 12 girls of one race to have to form a WhatsApp group in order to talk about another race. So I think it's going to be hopefully not caught in the headlines all the time. But I think our failure to deal with racism, even from a governmental, we haven't dealt with it. We've only just recently passed the hate speech bill. It took years. So, that there's been no outcome for people who have behaved in a racist way. It's only going to be happening now that we have an equality court. So I think we have a lot of work to do, Cathy. And so I guess these incidents, which really are not headline worthy, are going to continue. And, for us, I'm talking about myself as white people, I think one of the worst things you can be accused of in South Africa is to be racist. We hate, we fear, we don't know what to do if we're referred to as racist. And our first, usual reaction is to immediately deny it and say that we didn't mean it. So I think that, we really need to do a lot more work on this than we have previously been doing in order to avoid these kind of headlines.
Seth, it seems to me that we have to go back to do what you had said earlier, which is our education spaces being the centers that drive culture and that drive awareness and that drive consciousness. And for some people might think, well, yes, 14 to 18-year-olds should be aware of their behavior. But can we genuinely say that when not even our history is taught in its full extent to young people in the school curriculum? You only have a clearer picture of what happened if you actually take history as a subject.
Cathy, let me just say this also. I think Terry asked a very good question. Let's go to these schools and look at how many teachers that are black that are in the staff. And even go further and say, what subjects are they teaching? And you will see this subtle racism even at that level. That even black children will feel more comfortable being taught by a white teacher. And again, it is that is why I say my age group suffered from apartheid, and we're doing all we can to make sure that our children do not get into that space. Now, let's talk, for instance, racism as a topic in the curriculum. Let me tell you immediately when, again, I think it was in Cape Town, when a white teacher was making an example that was not sitting well with African people. It became a hullabaloo about it. And when a black teacher makes a similar example, it was also, no, black people cannot be racist. Maybe they cannot, historically speaking. But what are those things that are now supposed to inform our education spaces and our culture that we need to start talking about and introducing so that our children can grow in an environment that is right?
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. I wish we had more time. Seth Mazibuko, a social justice activist, Terry Oakley-Smith, MD of Diversity. What's clear is that the work still has to be done, and it lies with all of society, schools not excluded or exempt from that. That's where we leave it on this Monday morning on The Talking Point. Back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday.
Winners, finalists, fan favorites, and viral sensations from previous seasons of America's Got Talent return to the stage to compete for the All-Star title. Join Heidi Klum, Howie Mandel, and Simon Cowell as they decide who is the best of the best. The creme de la creme, the top dog, is in Chamatota. It's a festival of talent on America's Got Talent All-Stars. Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. on S3. Channel your best entertainment with America's Got Talent All-Stars. Only on S3. Open up.
The South African hockey team will be highly focused on switching off any spark of attack from the Argentine in the women's Pool B clash. However, the South Americans have a vivid assignment to silence the African Queens. This is the Olympic Games Paris 2024. South Africa versus Argentina on Monday 29 July at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport is the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes.
For the love of the game.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of The Door, an addict's journey, read by Simpson Kumalo.
I don't think to an addict death is so bad. Hell, I'm not sure that I can even blame addicts who take their own life, or even for that matter, overdoses. You just find yourself alone in a big, black, dismal hole, and that is forever dragging down, and you hardly even know how to scream or even ask for help. At some stage, you don't even want to ask for help. You cherish the idea of being alone and on your own. You're alone in your world, and only you understand you at this point. The demons in your head are your constant companions, and at any given moment, you could respond to any of those voices that have become your solace and keeping you company in your head. The world shuts down in your head, and you hear nothing but you and your demons. Death is another dimension of addiction that offers a solace from all the troubles that the world had brought. This is a way of escape. I saw it as such. I did not see suicide in my case as something horrific. The more I used, the more pronounced the door to death became. I wanted out, and out seemed a natural progression to my life in addiction. Death became attractive, and each path was now a symbiotic relation with death. I became numb to pain and indifferent to death. My soul was hollow, and I felt empty and devoid of life. I seemed to be existing in body form, and nothing seemed to matter anymore. I was always pushing the limits of what my body could handle, and every time I lit the pipe and heard that screeching sound of rock taking in the flame from my lighter, melting the rock as I was waiting to inhale that smoke as it disappeared through the pipe into my lungs. I was inching closer and closer to my next level. My life source was getting weaker and weaker, and death was closer than I think. It was only when I came back from my high euphoric state induced by my lover and friend, crack cocaine, that I would naturally think about the consequences of my behavior. But the minute I held that pipe in my hand, I started using. I could not stop. Truly, one is too many, and 1,000 never enough. When you are cut off from the world and all your loved ones, you're alone, And for the first time, you are with yourself and have to confront yourself. This is not a natural picture. It is abnormal to the extreme. You are dealing with the identity issues and wondering who the hell you are and what on earth you are doing there in that place. Little did I know that they were engaging thoroughly with my wife and digging up information about my behavior in active addiction. So the collateral letter by its very nature is meant to expose you. It is meant to depict the monster tendencies that you are so eager to bury. So the process never gets explained to you, and you find yourself with letters from family that are shocking and filled with all your despicable behavior. You now realize the extent to which your addiction has hurt others. How others have also become casualties on the self-inflicted destructive path that you chose. You realize how much of a selfish bastard you have been. This was a damaging collateral letter. I was not prepared to receive it, and neither was I ready to hear the damage that my addiction has caused. I was not ready to divulge the contents of my supposed private letter. I was not ready to hear for myself the extent to which I have ravaged and destroyed my family. I certainly did not want these people in rehab to hear it all. Couldn't I hear it in private? This is an invasion of privacy. I guess I gave up that right a long time ago. I'm in control, and so how can they so connivingly extract information detailed for that matter from my wife about my madness? She can't do that, can she? I guess this moment was going to come anyway. At least I thought I was better prepared for it. I rationalized that I was strong and could handle anything that was brought my way. The thoughts kept running around and around in my head. She can't betray me like that and disclose the intimate details of my shenanigans. She can't. Is she trying to get back at me for the hell I've put her through? What is she trying to do? What are the motives here? I demand and expect loyalty. But I knew very well that I did not deserve loyalty. I know I've been a scumbag and did all sorts of things, but I'm sure that this is private. Did they get to her? Psychologists can get to you. They can get you to confess things you never intended to confess or reveal. Did they get in her head in the name of helping me recover from drugs? These are unscrupulous bastards. How can they do that without my permission? I'm exposed. This is not good for my reputation. I was still concerned about my reputation. The little that I had was still mine, and I was not prepared to have someone expose me in that manner. It would strip me naked of my dignity. I panicked and paced around and asked on numerous occasions to see my collateral letter from the councillors. I was entitled to it, and they were denying me. Addict behavior was showing itself as I wanted to get my way, and these rules were just messed up. I've always been a private person, and now this. I was called in and told my letter would be read by me in big group. Okay. How was I going to handle this? What is in this letter? I thought long and hard about the pain I had caused, and all the memories of my lying, stealing, cheating, manipulation came back like a ton of bricks. There were many instances where my dear wife caught me red-handed with drugs, smoking that pipe, and she was ashamed. You could tell the disappointment written all over her face. I remembered in detail every single incident. Everything that possibly could be in this letter, I figured should spare nothing. What this chap went through in the group with his collateral letter was nothing compared to what I had done. I was sure this woman put it all in there and wanted to embarrass me and strip me naked. After much contemplation, and like the flash of lightning that hit Paul on his road to Damascus, I had an epiphany moment. Why am I so unsettled in my spirit? Why am I so worried about the contents of the letter? Why am I so concerned about the whole thing? It was consuming me and occupying the better part of my mind, and I could not get it out. What is done and can never erase, no matter how hard I tried. I'm here, It was a moment of internal transformation that brought me to the realization that I am human and prone to make mistakes, and I'm here to recover my life. So the letter for me was the way of opening me up and making me vulnerable to my fellow addicts. We were in this boat together and cut from the same cloth. We suffer from addiction. The addiction took us in different directions, but it was our life's journey. So I made up in my mind that I was not there to make friends, and it did not matter for me what was revealed by anyone, including my wife. I was there for one thing and one thing alone, and that was to get my recovery. I had been to hell, and I was trying my very best to come back from the abyss. If this process of collateral letter aided in my recovery, then so be it. So read all you want to, get as much as you want to from whoever. You will never break me. Today I will be a headline and a talk of the community, and tomorrow it will be somebody else. This was the motivational speaker in me. This too shall pass. I had surrendered to the process. Have your way with me, Lord. I'm ready to deal with this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This duplicitous nature and character must go. I was ready to nail it to the cross and come out a brand new man, God willing. For me, this was my last attempt at recovery. It was my last hope, and I wanted it. I was done with flying under the radar. I was done with the pretenses. Teach me, help me, and let me learn the tools I need to survive on the outside. Life is too precious to just allow it to pass by. It stops right here, now, and no further. I wanted my life back. I wanted my children back. As to my marriage, I harbored no hope of recovery. The damage had been too deep to even contemplate anything, and for now, to keep myself sane and sober,